For a show all about writers and writing as we take up our quills. Let's meet our scribblers in fine feathers. It's Lou Sanders. Ruffling a few feathers, it's Tom Allen. Knock me down with a feather, it's Jimmy Carr. Always tickling our fancy. Alan Davis! Right. Let's get writing. Lou goes.
That's nice.
Tom goes. Jimmy goes. And Alan goes. If you want to take notes, your own quill pens are on your desk, but why don't we tend to use them anymore?
Does anyone use a pen anymore? I don't even use a pen.
Do you not?
When did you last write something down? You type it.
Also, my mum is allergic to feathers. And
Is she? She
yeah.
couldn't have written anything.
There used to be a name for that. That was called being illiterate.
Ah,
No.
that's my dad. My mum can actually write and read.
They were the writing instrument of choice for almost 1,500 years, but they required a lot of upkeep. So basically, not very efficient. You could write maybe 3 or 4 letters at a time, and then you'd run out of ink, and they regularly needed sharpening. So the pen part of a penknife... Anybody know where the word pen in penknife comes from?
Oh, from sharpening pens?
Yes, and it comes from penna, which is Latin for feather. So that is why we call it a penknife.
Oh, did you hear that? That was a lovely... I tell that to someone in a pub.
So, in order to make a quill pen, what you're going to have to do, first of all...
You're going to have to catch a bird.
Yes. It has to be a feather from a live bird, is the first thing. And then there's a hierarchy of quills. So, Jimmy, you've got the goose.
Is that like an everyday...
It is, I'm afraid. It's
working
common.
pen?
Common a garden, that's well.
When you say a live bird, it's not... Is it live for long? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, once you've plucked a bird's feather, it will grow back. It'll take about a year, probably, for it to grow back again.
So ye olde W.H. Smiths would have been just a bunch of birds and you're plucking pens out one at a time.
Well,
and you're going, I'll be back in a year for a refill.
There was a real problem in the 19th century. They began to experience a real shortage of quills. Why might that be?
Oh, avian flu or something. Was it?
No, just more people could read and write, darling.
Very dark mind, Tom, very dark.
You said earlier that you could write 3 letters and then you'd have to dip again.
You'd have to dip again.
Is that why Shakespeare was so good? Because he really had to think about stuff?
Yeah.
Whereas now, you know, Da Vinci Code, they can just crack it out.
I think that's why some books are just overlong, because people think, oh, it's fine, I can just write 1,000,000 words, and it wasn't so well thought out.
Is that a Dickens quote? I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time.
I didn't have time, yeah, absolutely, because it means you have to think...
That was the noise again. I made them do the noise.
They were just startled, Jimmy, that you knew something. So,
I read a really interesting thing that Clive James wrote about typewriters. He said about the noise that writing used to make. So when he wrote his first memoir, he wrote it on a typewriter. It was a terrific racket all day long.
it was a phenomenal noise.
Ping
yeah.
every line.
And I still, that's a sign of my age, because I still do that when I'm
Really?
writing.
On an iPad, you'll do that?
Yeah, I know, it's very annoying.
I would like to have that effect when I press return, that it goes
Ting.
ting.
Do you
Just
think-
so other people on the train in the quiet carriage could be
You know when you hear people on their phone and they haven't turned the keypad tones on?
Yes. Oh, it's so endearing, isn't
Oh,
it?
that was a good noise as well.
I just say to them, you know you can turn that off, don't you?
Do you? Are
Yeah.
you bold
Do you?
like that?
Yeah, just say, do you want me to do it for you?
Throw the phone at
Yeah.
Now, you've got a crow feather.
Oh, thanks.
These were for autistic people. They were specifically for drawing thin lines. So you might be doing an architectural drawing or some such thing.
You might be drawing my body. It's thin, you get it?
You've got a swan quill.
Oh, lovely.
And that's only the best. So
Thank
Elizabeth
you.
the First, she preferred swan. But the everyday one, Thomas Jefferson kept his own geese.
I was so pleased when I got given this, and now I feel like,
Jimmy?
No, you're right-handed.
Yeah, I'm right-handed, yeah.
You would need a quill from a left wing if you are right-handed, because you don't want the feather to be hitting you in
oh,
the
that
face.
must have been awful then if they weren't killing the birds and they were just bald on one side. Just flying in circles going, well, this one still works.
If bald eagles lose a feather on one wing, they will shed it on the same one on the other side. Why,
Wow.
why might they do that?
Fashion.
So wait, so you pull out one, they pull out the other. That's fascinating.
Yeah, but what's that, though? What's that?
It's a seagull going to the library.
They're coming back from the library.
Oh, sorry.
Sandy, I have a question.
Darling.
I mean, it's all very well talking about feathers. Why didn't they just sharpen a stick?
It has like a little reservoir inside it.
That's where the ink goes.
The ink can go inside, whereas a stick less successful. And in fact, one of the sort of forerunners of the fountain pen, they worked out that they could have a little steel holder, and you could actually cut one of these into 5 or 6 little nibs, and then we eventually get to the fountain pen. But there are some advantages to the quill because it can hold certain inks which would clog a fountain pen, like India ink, for example. Now, goose feathers are still used. For what purpose might you still use a goose feather?
God, I've got that as well.
Pillows and duvet.
Pillows and duvets.
Pillows and
Thank
duvets.
you. What is this game? There are no rules.
It's lawless.
Absolute Wild West hit.
What else?
A goose himself or herself are using the feathers.
No, it's not one of the answers we had thought of, but yes, goose feathers still weirdly in use by the geese.
Fashion.
Fashion. No, so sport.
Oh. Archery.
Shuttlecocks.
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 That was absolutely enormous. Look out! Look out! The Giants are playing on the next court!
Has to be made, a shuttlecock, from the left wing of a goose in order that it spins clockwise when it is struck. What?
This is a great show. I'm learning.
The name Federer, like in, as in Roger Federer.
Greatest ever tennis player.
Yeah. OK, his name means one who trades in quills. So really, he should have been a badminton player. Would have been much better.
Oh, does he know?
I bet he'd pick it up, wouldn't he, badminton?
Do you think?
Yeah, probably.
You've wasted your life, Roger.
The real money's in badminton.
Now, pens poised for the next question. What do you think these Q words mean?
Quackawodger.
Yeah, what do you reckon?
Is that somebody who can't pronounce their R's properly asking Roger to hurry up? Quackawodger.
Jonathan Ross asking Roger Federer to hurry up.
Quackawodger. They'll be here in a minute. Yeah.
Sounds like a thing you do.
Yes, it is sort of a thing you do. You know those wooden puppets that you get, the ones with the strings?
Oh, yes.
So it's the person pulling the strings. But it became a name for politicians who one presumed were having their strings pulled by somebody else.
God, there are so many of them, aren't there?
So that's a great word, isn't
Shit.
it? You quackawodger.
I don't think it would gain you any points, though, would it, in the House of Commons if you stood up and went, you are a quackawodger!
Right, next one. Let's have a look. Who's got a pick? Lou.
Quick sticks.
Quick sticks.
I think that's early onset erections. And that happens all the time when I walk into a room.
Early onset.
6:30 in the evening. Oh, my God, already.
It means hurry up, doesn't it? Quick sticks.
It just means right away.
Chop, chop.
Doesn't Mary Poppins say it?
I see Mary Poppins, I remember
She says
saying
quick
it.
sticks, I think.
Yeah, that's what she's talking about.
I love that film. I think it's great. The original. I'm talking about the original.
I haven't seen the new one.
Have you not? It's just not Julie Andrews. So what can I say?
I know, and I quite fancy Emily Blunt, and you're not supposed to fancy Mary Poppins.
No, that's very bad.
Quite wrong.
You get a quick sticks around Mary Poppins.
Quick sticks around Emily Blunt,
I
no
know.
mistake.
In the 1940s, it was criminal slang for, you know, escaping from the police.
That sounds so innocent, doesn't it? What a wonderful time that must have been like. Come on, lads, quick sticks.
The old Bill.
The old Bill's coming in.
You and I would be marvellous in one of those films.
Oh, a lovely Ealing comedy.
Jimmy, what's going to pick here?
Quake buttock is the old English term for twerking.
Is it something to do with being nervous or...?
Yeah, it is coward. It's literally shaking in your ass. It's
It's a coward.
It's a coward.
A quacker watcher and a quake butter.
Yes, exactly. Poltroon is also a coward, a dastard.
Poltroon?
A poltroon,
Oh,
yeah.
it's a great word, isn't
It's
it?
a great word.
Poltroon.
Comes from an Italian word for sluggard, lazy person. And dastard, I love. Somebody who's cowardly, acts in an underhand manner.
It's more than cowardly, though, isn't it? It's sneaky.
Underhand. It's really an underhand thing, yeah. What else have we got?
Quaff-tied. Something to do with finishing your drink, I imagine.
It is, well, time for a drink.
Oh, I thought it was the dirty stuff that's left in the bath after a festival.
Quaff-tied.
So half of it is Danish, which half?
Tide?
Quaff?
Tide. Tide. So Danish word for time is tid. So when we say time and tide waits for no man, it's really redundant because tide means time.
Do we get an awful lot of the nautical terms from you Viking people?
Yes, we've been busy. But we also bring you philosophical things, like the concept of dreaming is a Scandinavian idea.
Really?
Yeah.
What did we do before we knew you?
Just slept.
And now we wake up screaming.
So the quaff part comes from Irish Gaelic and probably means cup. So time for your cup or time for your drink. It's a lovely word which I think we should bring back. I think we've got one left up there. Quench coal.
So putting out a fire.
Yeah, so it's an obsolete word for something that puts out a fire, but it was used sort of figuratively. So somebody would put out any wonderful thoughts you might be having.
Rag, a damp...
Like a fun sponge.
It is. When you're passionate about something, nobody should try and quench coal it. Nobody should try and put out the passion that you have.
Oh, I mean, if somebody said that to me, it would really quench cold my whole quick sticks.
OK, that's a few of our favourite Q words, but where might you be well advised to skip the queue?
Well, they don't like to queue in France.
Or Italy.
Or Italy.
They're really,
So-
very pushy, especially the elderly in Italy.
Yeah.
Right.
They burrow in, the little Italian women, they burrow right into the heart of the queue and then you can't get them out. They're in the front.
I like that. A tiny Italian woman just pushing by everyone to the front. I go,
Yeah,
good.
scusi, 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 scusi. And then she's in the front and no one knows how to stop her.
She's not got long left. I think they should be allowed to go to the front.
Yeah, she's gonna die.
People with kids should be right at the back. They've got ages.
Yeah.
Maybe they should just do queuing by longevity. How long do you think you've got?
You shouldn't queue in hospital. Well, my friend skipped the queue, but she'd cut her finger off, so they were like, yeah, come to the front.
Yes, that's quite a serious thing, isn't it?
Well, as well, because she can't, when they come out and go, who's next? She was not in a position to
can-
go like...
So it's not actually about queuing in terms of a physical queue. It's about the letter Q.
The letter Q.
Yes, you were right. Yes.
The surname Smith. You don't need a queue in that. Skip it. I just give myself 10 points there.
Are there some languages where there isn't a queue?
Well, the letter Q was actually banned in Turkey until 2013, along with two other letters, the X and the W.
It's a language thing.
It is a language thing, darling. But the real issue is that the Turkish language doesn't use the letter Q, but the Kurdish one does. And there was a lot of anti-Kurdish sentiment in Turkey, and so those letters were not allowed to appear in official documents, and people were not allowed to use them when naming their children. Until the early 1990s, it was illegal in Turkey for the 15 to 20 million Kurds, you're talking about 20% of the population, to use any Kurdish at all in public. And it was only since 2013 that you are actually allowed to use the letter Q once more in Turkey.
In Turkey, would they not have quavers then?
Well, that's why there's been an outcry.
Yeah.
People are a little bit
Yeah.
annoyed about the sort of repression of the Kurdish people, but mainly
Quavers.
those lovely cheesy snacks.
The earliest version of a Q is Phoenician. It was known as the quaff, It dates from about 10,000 BC. Quoff is thought to have meant monkey. I think the idea is that the top bit is a sort of face and then that's the tail of the monkey. Although this is how unsure we are. Another theory is that it's a sewing needle. And actually we have kind of similar things now. You know the at sign? In Dutch, that's known as the monkey's tail. It is called Eppensjater. And then the Klammeraf in German, which is the spider or the hanging monkey.
What's the name for the at sign? There must be a fancy word.
I think people just call it the at sign. In Danish, it's called snabel, which means elephant's trunk.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it meant snail, which would make perfect sense.
No, but it kind of looks like an elephant's trunk, do you not think?
Have you ever seen an elephant bend its trunk behind itself?
By lots and lots of counts, Q is the least common letter in the English language, and actually, we don't really need it at all.
Are you saying this whole series is a waste of time? So this series could just be called I?
Well, it could be called KW. Would make the same sound, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes.
Quoth
Yeah, like
sound.
Quick Fit. They must be Turkish.
Yeah. The Romans themselves seem to be aware that the Q wasn't really necessary. So in 90 AD, a Roman emperor stated that the letter Q was redundant except for the purpose of attaching vowels to itself, and his name was...
Quinton.
Quintilian.
But then you'd have to have the KE too.
You'd have to have KW.
The Queen would be KWWE. I don't think people would go with it.
No, I don't think it's going to go.
Try and stop the English using the Q, you'll have a fight on your hands.
There's lots of languages without it. Estonian, Icelandic, Latvian, Polish, Slovenian. Denmark abolished the Q from native words, 1872.
Oh, why?
It just didn't need it. The Danes are very kind of organised. We have a word enkelt, which doesn't really translate into English, and it means beautiful through simplicity. And I think we just thought, that's not enkelt enough, we'll just get rid of it. We're just not necessary.
Oh, that's a lovely...
Why they do so many killings there?
You do a lot of killings, and you know you do.
Now, I'm going to play the sound of someone typing. What do you think they are trying to say?
We don't know any Shakespeare. We're only monkeys.
So why might we know, just from the sound, what somebody is actually trying to say?
Do they have a slightly different pitch, all of the buttons?
Yeah, so it's the QWERTY keyboard, and it can be translated, if you like, to work out what we are typing. No. If you had just a microphone, hackers would be able to discover your logins, your password, any other confidential information that you might be typing, because each key hits a different part of the keyboard's underplate, and there is a slightly different sound for every single one, and there's an algorithm which can be used to work out which sound corresponds with which letter.
Jimmy looks worried.
I'm going to have to learn to write again. Presumably, for each keyboard, it would be different.
Well, you just need 10 minutes with one keyboard with a microphone.
Is this for a typewriter or for a keyboard?
For a computer keyboard. Computer scientists at the University of California in Berkeley estimate hackers would need 10 minutes and they could crack anybody's computer code.
What about an iPad?
I don't think it would work on that, but it would work on a computer...
Do your dirty work on an iPad, Jimmy.
My dirty work.
And now I imagine that dirty work is Jimmy's password.
What is it about boys? Because you don't type with two hands like that. Every time I'm on a train, there's some boy typing and he's doing this.
Yeah.
Mavis Deacon did me proud, that little typing thing.
You learn to type.
Oh, yeah.
When I was at school, we were all taught to type, and they used to tie an apron to the top of the typewriter and then round your neck, and then so you had to type underneath the apron so you couldn't see.
At the
what you-
boys' school, Sandy, you're taught to dictate.
I think the key part of that word is dick.
That was very good. Could you just take that down for us?
We can actually reveal, Alan, what was being typed. Alan.
Say... blue... Or 100 point. Blue whale.
Yeah, it's too late now. There was an astonishing statistician in the early 1900s called Roger Babson, and he came up with a rather odd typing innovation. He suffered from TB, and he believed that fresh air was going to be the answer to him and his condition. So his entire office was so flooded with fresh air. He always had the windows open, and all his staff, female, obviously, they wore hooded onesies. It looks like The Handmaid's Tale, doesn't it? And then he got them to type. But if you look, can you see the woman? She was so cold that she had to use little hammers in order to type. See the little hooked hammers there?
Wow.
And apparently she got up to very good speed
Was
with
he a
them.
member of KKK or not?
Only comparatively recently, the men have typed at all. Do we know why?
Sometimes men have bigger fingers. I actually don't. I was blessed with a narrow wrist. Very dainty fingers. But men sometimes have wider fingers, or especially if you see like a man who works in the garden who has very big fingers.
Tell me more about this guy in the garden.
Mellors.
No, it's nothing to do with that. The very first mass-produced typewriters, they advertised them showing women using them. The idea was this machine is so simple, even a woman can use it. And men did not want to be emasculated by being seen to do typing. And then it generally was agreed in offices. Women would spell and type better, they would raise the tone of the office, and then they would marry and leave and not require a pension.
Well, if you watch those things like Mad Men, if you watch kind of anything set back then, it's just extraordinary.
Yeah, when I very first started at the BBC, so we're talking about the early 1980s, no man typed. All the men were producers. There was a big pool of secretaries, and the men would speak into a dictaphone and the women would type it up, so there was no typing done by men at all.
I'm using a dictaphone. Use your finger like everybody else.
Those buzzers that we played at the very beginning, it's from the Typewriter Symphony. It was actually the theme tune on the news quiz on Radio 4. It still is. A guy called Leroy Anderson, American composer, he wrote it where the typewriter is used as a percussion instrument. It's one of my favourites. Have a quick look at this video.
Oh!
Isn't that wonderful?
That's a guy that forgot his instrument and refused to back down.
It's a trained percussionist who does it. They slightly cheat. They modify the typewriter so only 2 keys are working. So otherwise you'd get it jammed, wouldn't you, if you played like that? I'd absolutely love it. Now, on to a question about spy novels. What was the name of James Bond's gadget expert?
Q.
Q. No, in the films, but not in the novels. Q does not appear in
But you know there are James Bond films.
Yes.
And he's called Q in them,
yes,
so
but
it's
in
sort
the,
of right, isn't it?
But in the original novels, only the Q branch is mentioned. And in the question, I did ask about the spy novels.
That's the problem. I don't listen.
No, because you're a man and you're too busy dictating.
So Q, the character Q, is thought to be based on a real inventor called Charles Fraser Smith, and he worked for the clothing department of the Ministry of Supply. Of course, his real job was coming up with gadgets for the Secret Service. They were called Q gadgets after the World War I Q ships. So these were warships which were disguised as freighters, and they got their name from their home port, Queenstown, in Ireland. And they looked like a perfectly ordinary freighter, and they had cargo and all that kind of thing. In fact, it was to lure U-boats up to the surface. And as soon as the U-boat came up, they would reveal their unbelievable armaments. I mean, unbelievably brave work. 44 Q ships were destroyed, but they also managed to destroy 15 U-boats. So that is where the Q thing comes from. It comes from these Q ships. This is Desmond Llewellyn. He was the very first Q in the films, showing some of the devices. But Fraser Smith's own devices include a map, saw and compass hidden inside a hairbrush. Who doesn't want one of those?
Oh, yeah, that would stick out with me, I think.
The best one was the man with the golden gun. He gives him a fake nipple.
And what was the...
Well, because Scaramanga, who's like the super baddie in the movie, has 3 nipples, but no one knows it's him, so James Bond has to pretend to be him. So they give him... Here's your gadget for the film. It's a fake nipple.
This is a genuine one. He designed a pipe which could be smoked without ruining the map, which was hidden inside the bowl. But he did this by lining the pipe with asbestos. And he created a map of invisible ink which was able to be seen by dousing it in the only liquid you'd always have to hand.
Urine.
Urine, absolutely right. And he also came up with the idea of developing garlic-infused chocolate bars for British agents so that when they dropped into France, they would smell convincingly. What's the least least plausible gadget from a James Bond film that you can think of?
Wasn't there an invisible car at one point?
Yeah. My favourite is a submarine in the shape of an alligator. In Octopussy. There was Dentonite, which was explosive toothpaste, a ski pole rocket launcher, and bagpipes flamethrower. That is very good. Actually, Ian Fleming had his own sort of Bond-like gadget. When he finished Casino Royale, he was so pleased he had a gold-plated typewriter made for himself. And his nephew, Fergus Fleming, said that his literary acquaintances considered it the height of vulgarity.
Not least because he was the only man who could type. Ian.
I love, love, love the music to James Bond. Let's have a quick listen to the original James Bond theme. The composer is a man called Monty Norman, and it actually comes from a song about a man with an unlucky sneeze, which he reworked into the James Bond theme. It was originally called Bad Sign, Good Sign, and it didn't sound at all like the original song. Have a listen to this.
Can I have some onion barges, please?
I was born with this unlucky sneeze, and what is worse, I came into the world the wrong way round.
Okay.
Oh, this is surely bullshit.
This is true. V.S. Nicole's novel, A House for Mr. Biswas, is a wonderful novel, and Mr. Biswas has a terrible sneeze, and it's unlucky for him. And Monty Norman wrote a musical version of this, which was not a huge success. He was later hired to write the music for the first Bond film, which was Dr. No. He reworked the theme tune into the James Bond theme tune. So we thought we'd do a bit of, I'm going to call it quarioke, because it starts with a Q. We're going to try and see if we can sing the original James Bond theme tune. So the words are going to come up on the screen for you. Let's do it.
I was born with this unlucky sneeze, and what is worse, I came into the world the wrong way round. It's all agree that I'm the reason why my father fell into the village pond and drowned.
No. You know what? I now don't believe you when you say it wasn't a huge hit.
Yeah.
Now I can't understand.
I'd rather
Never mind.
watch that than James Bond.
He fell into the village pond and drowned.
It's a very sad story.
Is it a true story?
No.
We've been expecting you, Mr. Bond. We heard you sneezing all the way down the corridor.
And the pond needs to
Bloody
clear out.
My name is Pond.
James Bond.
Bond.
Anyway, here is my next question. What would you find in Mrs. Q's memoirs?
I like the image you've used, by the way, that you think a key might be needed to undo a piece of string.
Well, it is possibly the key to her heart, my darling.
You don't know about love, do you?
I've never experienced it. Well, I joke. I've had a lot of love on very short-term bases.
My dressing room door is always open.
And mine has a key. So, early 19th century, Mrs. Q...
Mrs. Q's memoirs. Was it a fake name for someone with a salacious memoir?
It was a woman called Harriet Wilson. She was a courtesan.
I love that. We say sex worker now.
So she started her career at aged 15 as a mistress of Lord Craven, and she took lots of lovers. Some people say the Prince Regent. We have no evidence for that. When she announced that she was going to write her memoirs, she said any concerned gentleman could pay £200 to avoid being written about. Among those that she wrote to and said, do you want me to leave you out, was Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, who rather famously said, publish and be damned. She was 10th out of 15 children, and 3 of her sisters also became courtesans. Fanny was the first to take up the trade.
Wow.
Just saying. I love this. She took up the trade with a man called Mr. Trench, and when her sisters asked why, she replied, I refused him the whole of the first day. Had I done so the second, he would have been in a fever. So published in 1825, it was 4 volumes, and it was,
Wow.
I mean, unbelievably popular. So popular, a barrier had to be set up outside the publishers' offices, and the publishers and Wilson went on to make £10,000, which at the time was an enormous amount of money. It has the great opening line, these memoirs: "I shall not say how and why I became, at the age of 15, the mistress of the Earl of Craven." It's a fantastic opening. Anybody think of a book that kind of mirrors this situation recently?
Well, I suppose Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels, absolutely. She said that, of course, that Donald Trump had paid to keep their affair secret.
I've not read the book. I've watched a lot of her films, but... Probably similar areas.
The chapter concerning Trump begins, "OK, so did you just skip to this chapter?" What she says is, "My life is a lot more interesting than an encounter with Donald Trump, but I get it. Still, of all the people who I had sex with, why couldn't the world obsess over one of the hot ones?" And then she went on tour, "Make America Horny Again."
She's working as a stand-up comedian now.
Really?
Yeah.
She's funny. She's funny.
Most controversial book in history of, what should we call it, adult literature?
Would it be Lady Chatterley's Lover?
It would, absolutely. In 1960, it was prosecuted under the 1959 Obscene Publications Act.
Presumably those memoirs had very salacious bits within them.
I think it was really more socially shocking, Lady Chatterley's Lover, because you have an upper-class woman having an affair with a working-class man, and that was just seen as completely...
Disgusting.
I've always thought the class thing in those kind of books is interesting. Like, if you look at 50 Shades of Grey, if that was a working-class guy driving a van that was doing all that, it'd be a very different book.
Yeah.
He's a billionaire being
Yeah.
awful to her. You go, oh, he's very rich, though. He's got
If
a
he was
helicopter.
doing it all whilst he was driving the van, that really...
That would be interesting. In Lady Chatterley's Lover, in the case, the defence prosecutor, Mervyn Griffiths-Jones, pleaded with jurors, "Is it a book that you would wish your wife or your servants to read?"
He really had his finger on the pulse, didn't he?
Yeah. The jury returned not guilty, and sales absolutely soared.
Ooh, the best bit of publicity they could have asked for,
Oh,
surely.
darling. 3 million books in 3 months. It was absolutely
Wow.
fantastic. In fact, in America, they used to have a phrase, "banned in Boston." So Boston was seen as a rather puritanical city, and if you wrote "banned in Boston" across the book, it helped sell it enormously. Seen as an immoral work.
Wow.
Now, from one form of artistic expression to another, what is the most disgusting panel you can think of?
Oh, goodness, I've forgotten about that picture. It does look like I'm sort of merging into Alan.
I'd like to take a moment, Sandy, to
Yes.
thank you for the nasal trimmers you got me for Christmas.
It does look like you're saying, like, look, I've got nothing up my nose, OK?
So it's the letter Q we are looking for. What else might you have in a...
I'm absolutely stumped, actually, Sam.
OK, so the answer is quilts.
Quilts?
Quilts, yeah.
Oh, well, we were never going to get quilts.
But I think that is the point of the programme.
Well, then we did really well.
Yes, you did very well. There's a woman called Anna Demetriou. She was the 2018 president of the Science and Arts section of the British Science Association, and she made a quilt where every panel was impregnated with MRSA bacteria. Now, of course, she'd heavily treated it, so it wasn't going to kill you to actually hold the quilt up. It is Staphylococcus or aureus bacteria, so MRSA is the deadly strain of this, and what she was trying to do was to highlight the problem of antibiotic resistance.
Ooh.
Unpleasantly, I think. She got the bacteria out of her own nose and grew it on the quilt.
We did that to the Native Americans, didn't we? We gave them quilts with smallpox.
You're right, they did give out blankets infected with smallpox in order to subdue, they called it, the Native American
What
population.
point was she making with this?
She's just trying to show us the real issue that we're having at the moment with antibiotic resistance.
Someone told me, the problem isn't us taking antibiotics when we feel poorly. The problem is, if you eat a piece of meat...
Yeah.
They've been pumped so full of antibiotics so as
Yeah.
not to get ill that it's in all of us anyway.
Yeah.
And
That's
in
the real
milk,
issue.
it's in milk, it's in
Yeah,
everything.
it is. I mean, we have far too much exposure to antibiotics. Don't take them, as it were, willy-nilly.
Don't take them willy-nilly. It's
No.
very painful.
Yeah, I believe so.
Nil by Willie.
In fact, the whole thing about making quilts and so on goes much further. So during various wars in the 19th century, it was very common for soldiers to make rather intricate quilts, often made from scraps of uniform. They were known as convalescence quilts. And some of the most complex examples have up to 25,000 pieces of fabric in them. When I was a child, duvets were called continental quilts. Does anybody remember this? Continental
I
quilts?
remember them
remember-
starting. I just remember going to a hotel and it didn't have sheets and blankets. And we really didn't know what to do with ourselves. You couldn't tuck it in, now it's going to fall. And some of them did fall off. They'd slide straight
there was,
off you.
They first came to Britain in about 1964, and it was Habitat who advertised them, saying that you could make a bed so quickly, just a few shakes, that even a man could do it.
And how wrong they were, because getting that cover on...
Yeah, this is what we're going to do. So, you've each got a quilt and a cover.
Right?
Oh.
So we're going to have a very quick competition
Couldn't be easier.
to see who can be quickest.
Hang on, I haven't undone the bow yet. I haven't got my
Okay,
key.
get your quilt out. We're going to do it all at the same time.
Wait.
Okay,
Okay.
ready?
Is everybody...
I
Hang
can't
on.
find
Yeah,
the
yeah.
opening, Sandy.
Hang on, can we open it? Where do we start from?
Can't find my
is
thing.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3,
No,
go.
I'm not ready, I'm not ready. I'm nowhere near ready. Oh, my God. No, I can't do it.
Hang on, mine's buttoned up.
Go, they've got it.
Hang on. Mine's buttoned up. Yours didn't have buttons on it. Mine's buttoned up. That's not fair.
Jimmy,
Yes.
He has staff to do it for
are you
him.
all right? Mind your hair.
What happened? I think it's all right. I did, yeah. I mean,
Jimmy,
wow.
Wow. I think I'm not the only one who's amazed it stayed on.
We especially got a duvet cover for you with blue whales on. We were very pleased. Are you all right, sweetheart? So I think, no question about it, Lou was the winner there. It was absolutely fantastic. Now, put your security blankets away because it's time for the round that we call General Ignorance. Fingers on buzzers, please. What happens to Dr. Jekyll's trousers when he becomes Mr. Hyde?
They rip, don't they?
No, they don't rip. Why do they not rip?
Because he's not the Hulk.
He gets smaller. He becomes smaller and kind of hunched and like a beast.
Yeah, so they should fall down is the answer,
Yeah.
because in the book, Edward Hyde is much smaller than Dr. Jekyll. The reason for his short stature is he represents Dr. Jekyll's evil side, so the bit that he's been trying to suppress as he lives as decently and as morally as he can. It's the films and the TV that show him as big, more like the Incredible Hulk.
And the Hulk is based on that, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And Robert Louis Stevenson's tale was inspired by a man called Deacon Brodie. He lived in 18th century Edinburgh, and by day he was the most marvellous, respectable cabinet maker, lock maker, member of the town council. By night, he used the keys that he made to break into their homes and steal their stuff. This is him with his accomplice, George Smith.
Ooh, I think
George
you'd
Smith-
stick out the fact that he was a chicken.
Anyway, Robert Louis Stevenson had a wardrobe as a child at the end of his bed, which had been made by Deacon Brodie. So it's probably how he came to have the idea in the first place. And Brodie was eventually hanged, although the story is that he wore a steel band around his neck and escaped and went to Paris to live out his life.
I like the idea that you would be hung and they would go, well, don't look, we're hanging him, and just look the other way.
Yeah,
Where's the body gone? Oh, I don't know.
I don't know what happened to him.
He must have buried himself, I suppose.
Yeah. Anyway, who wrote this rhyme? The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts upon a summer's day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts and took them clean away.
Beyonce.
It's Lewis Carroll. Again? I think I was quite relatively intelligent.
So it was popularised by Lewis Carroll, but it was not written by him. It was first published in 1782, so Lewis Carroll's work doesn't come out till 1865. There are actually some additional verses about the King of Spades, the King of Clubs and the Diamond King. They've actually been forgotten, I think, because they're rather ruder than the verses about the germ tarts. The King of Hearts beats the knave until he gives the tarts back. The King of Spades kills the maids, while the Knave of Clubs gives winks and rubs.
It was a different time.
It was. It is an amazing book, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Never been out of print. It celebrated its 150th birthday in 2015. Lots of working titles for it. He had Alice's Adventures Underground, Alice Among the Fairies, Alice's Hour in Elfland. They're rather nice, aren't they? Finally, what colour is the Emerald City?
I think I know a weird fact about The Wizard of Oz, which
Yes.
I didn't realise until recently, which is that it's an allegory for America. The farmers are the straw man and they need a brain, and industry was the tin man and industry doesn't have a heart. Wow. And the lion was the politicians and that they didn't have any courage.
You're absolutely right. But it's not what we were looking for. We were looking for the colour.
Well, is the answer green, then? Oh, damn it! I knew something! I knew something!
Yes.
Emerald. Yes. Yellow.
Brown.
No.
Red.
Stop naming colours.
Blue. Teal.
When she first goes to the City of Oz, she is told she must don a pair of protective glasses in order to avoid being blinded by the brightness.
Silver.
I have that when I have laser on my Jack and Danny. They make you wear glasses.
On your what?
What?
Jack and Danny.
Jack and Danny.
Jack and Danny, Fanny.
Sorry, it's called a Jack... What is...
A Jack and Danny.
They make you put the glasses on.
No, wait.
Also,
Jack and Danny.
my mum doesn't like me doing rude stuff, and she's really pleased I was going to be on QI.
Right.
And now she's not going to be pleased anymore. She's going to be very embarrassed in front of the gardening club, of course, again.
Speaking of the gardening club, you had all downstairs.
I did not know. It's rhyming slang, is it, Jack and Danny? Who knew?
For Fanny, yeah.
My favourite when I was growing up was always called the a fine china.
Oh.
Oh, is that your...
Because you get it out for special occasions.
Exactly right,
Back to the Wizard of Oz. What we learn from the wizard at the end is that he makes everybody wear green spectacles so that things appear green. And when she asks if that means everything isn't really green, he replies, "No more so than any other city, but my people have worn green glasses on their eyes so long that most of them think it really is an emerald city." There is a city in America which is known as the Emerald City. It's Seattle. It's a beautiful place that's surrounded by water and evergreen forests. Have you been to Seattle?
I've been. It's...
You must have played there, Dan.
Yeah, I played there last year. It was an amazing place to do a gig as well. It's incredible. There in Portland, just incredible. I played a place in Portland when I was last there, the Aladdin Theatre. And I said, "Oh, anything interesting about the theatre?" And they went, "Oh, yeah, it used to be a cinema." He said, "We showed one film here for 20 years.
No.
I said...
What was it?
I said, "Was it Deep Throat?"
No, it wasn't.
And the guy said to me, he said, "Don't put a blue light on in there."
Everything looks green when viewed through emerald-tinted glasses. And there goes the bell for the end of the school day. Before we leave for playtime, let's have a look at your report cards. In first place tonight... Well, this is astonishing. With a full 5 points, it's Alan. In second place with -6, it's Lou. In third place with -13, Jimmy.
Very respectable.
Fabulous fourth with -26, it's Tom. Thanks to our guests, Tom, Jimmy, Lou and Alan. And I leave you with this quick quotation from the quill of American author Robert Benchley. "It took me 15 years to discover that I had no talent for writing, but I couldn't give it up because by that time I was too famous. Goodbye." Good evening and welcome to QI. Well, tonight I am Queen of a quorum of queens. Let's meet one's loyal subjects. Speaking the Queen's English, Colin Lane.
Thank you.
Taking the Queen's shilling, David Mitchell. Wearing the Queen's uniform, Sarah Millican. And the groom of of the stool, Alan Davis. Right, let's hear their queenly quartet. Sarah goes.
Play with the Queen of Hearts.
Nice. Colin goes.
You are the dancing queen.
Oh, I love a bit of Scandi music. And David goes.
And the homecoming queen.
And Alan goes.
And what do you do?
Right, what can you tell me about the royal we?
It doesn't smell.
And we're off and running.
Behind there, edging his first delivery slip. Richie Benno.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Was that an Australian accent?
Oh, come on! I've been working on that since you were last here.
Really?
They don't open their teeth up.
They? Yes.
They. I've busted my crown,
Oh, no.
you see?
I'll go over to this side. What can you tell me
Yes.
about the royal we?
There was something weird about George III's wee. I think it maybe was purple, and then they thought he had
Yes.
porphyria,
Yes.
and then now they think he didn't have porphyria, but they were definitely saying there's something up with this guy's wee.
Yeah.
Also, he's gone mad.
Yes. That is entirely correct, but I'm heading in a different direction. Why might a royal person say we?
First person plural.
It is the majestic plural. It's known as nosism from the Latin nose for we. It's the idea that the royal person, instead of referring to themselves as I, in fact, says we.
Implying there's more than one of them.
Yes, well, we can trace it back to Henry II, and it used to mean God and I. That's what it really comes from. We've got Henry II there and his successor, Richard I, and it's Richard I that introduced the motto, Dieu est mon droit, God and my right, and that remains the royal motto ever since.
Got your crown, Dave. Got your crown.
I like to think this is like a working crown. This isn't like a Parliament opening coronation crown. This is a crown...
Daily.
Yeah, you could wear it all
Yeah.
the time, you could
Doing
go
the
into
dishes.
battle.
Yeah.
Gonna get a paper and some fags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to the garage at 3 a.m. for
Yeah.
munchies.
Yeah.
That's the thing, the Queen doesn't actually use the pronoun one as much as you would think. They analysed all her speeches since 1952, and she uses I 6 times more often than she says one. It's a parody, really, of how she speaks, because it isn't.
Unless she got bored of it.
Yeah, one's
Must be
not
boring
doing that
being
anymore.
queen, so just mix it up a bit.
It must be quite dull, do you not think? Constantly having to open and close things.
I don't think, to be fair, you mean opening as in launching?
Yeah.
And, yeah. I don't think she closes many things. You know, when BHS went
Yeah.
under, I didn't think you know.
But when you're in charge, the whole approach to pronouns can be quite complicated. So the very first Qin emperor, so the guy who unified China, is a guy called Shi Huangdi, and he announced when he became emperor that the character Chen, which was the normal singular pronoun, so I, was for his imperial use only. And it meant everybody else had to come up with other ways of referring
I am
to
Chen.
themselves. Yeah,
I am Chen.
I am Chen. Yeah. People used to refer to themselves often as you, meaning this foolish one, or not refer to yourself at all. In terms of things that you might refer to yourself if you're in charge, Kim Jong-il, he had more than 1,200 titles with which he used to refer to himself, including Heaven-Sent Hero, Guardian Deity of the Planet, and my personal favourite, Eternal Bosom of Hot Love.
1102, deluded maniac.
This is a great title. In Swaziland, Queen Mother of King Mswati III has enjoyed the title of Indlovukazi, the Great She-Elephant. I think I'd like to be that. Don't you think it's a good title?
No, sometimes that's what I feel like when I'm in the bath.
Now, who chews the Queen's food?
Beef eaters.
Bacteria.
Oh, yes, we're going to accept that, except that we are in the land of honey.
It's a bee.
The worker bees. The worker bees.
Worker bees are the other. It's not all the other bees because they divide up into lots of
So
categories.
there's lazy ones as well.
There are drone ones, there are scout ones, there are worker ones.
There are product development bees,
Yeah.
aren't there?
Yeah,
And they've achieved very little recently. I mean, it is just honey, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's just strange.
Unless it's Manuka honey and then it's 15 quid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are those bees on?
But when you compare them to Kit Kat, I mean, Kit Kat, there's orange Kit Kat, various... I mean, they've really worked on the product development compared to honey, it's just honey.
So worker bees, they pre-digest the queen's food because she doesn't have the necessary glands to digest it herself. Even more unpleasant than that, they have the power to put her on a crash diet.
What?
Yes, I know. So she gets really big and heavy. She's too heavy to fly. And when they want to swarm, which they do once a year, they put her on a crash diet so that she loses a third of her body weight, and so she's ready to take off.
Is there a committee or something? There's some level of management that goes, you know, the Queen's getting a bit porky. Maybe.
Genuinely don't know how these decisions are made. So, for example, choosing a new queen, they seem to select rather randomly a bee at the larva stage. And they give it a special diet, different from all of the workers. So these are queen cups. These are new queens being developed. Most larvae are fed honey and pollen by worker bees, but occasionally one is fed only royal jelly, which is a sort of protein that's secreted from the glands in the worker bees' heads. And this one is elevated to royal status and becomes queen. But I like that you asked the question because the truth is we don't know.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we used to think it was the royal jelly that made the queens develop differently, and we now think it's not what she's fed, but what she is not fed. So the fact that she does not get pollen and honey like the others, it actually makes her ovaries grow large, while the others' reproductive organs, the ones that get the pollen and honey, they actually shrink. And it's a terrible life, actually, because when it comes time to get rid of her, if she's sick or she's unproductive, she's not having any more babies, the workers kill her by balling her.
Oh, I don't know if I want to know what that is.
No.
It's not what I think it is.
No, large group swarms tightly around her and
Better than I was thinking. Yeah.
raises her body temperature until she is fatally overheated. And I know! I love that we're all feeling sorry for this queen bee. But actually, we say queen bee, since Aristotle's time, it was always assumed it was a king. It took until the 1670s. There was a Dutch scientist called Jan Swammerdam, and he dissected a king bee under a microscope and rather just shocked to discover the size of the ovaries, which represent a quarter of a mature queen's body weight. He also learnt this great thing. If you remove the queen from the hive on a stick, all the other bees will follow you. And this is a beekeeping trick that people use now. And the most bizarre use was in the 18th century in show business. There was a beekeeper called Daniel Wildman. He had a honey shop in London, and he promoted it by riding horses, standing up while wearing a beard of bees.
And that made people buy from his shop rather than just thinking he was mad.
It's pretty startling if you have a look. This is not him, but these are other people who have the skill of getting bees to do as they please.
Did they all have honey shops as well?
I think they were just selling tickets in the end because there was a woman called Patty Jones. So she was the wife of the inventor of the modern circus, Philip Astley. And she used to perform horse riding stunts, but she used to have a swarm of bees on her hand imitating a lady's muff. I mean a hand warmer.
So do I.
Now, who has sex for 15 years and gets licked to death by their own children?
Got to be an insect or something,
Is it something like a termite?
It is a termite. You're
It is.
absolutely right. Yes.
Did you know?
Let's just be warned, even if you like insects, I think this is a bit gross, OK? So
And
we are...
I don't really like insects.
Right, so in that case-
I accept they're necessary.
Yeah, they are necessary, but this is, honestly, a yellow pulsating mass. So the termite queen, just like bees, is the only fertile female in the colony, and she gives birth to all the rest. But unlike other insects, mates for life, and I mean literally. So after choosing, a king spends 15 years incessantly mating to produce the nest colony. She produces one egg every 3 seconds.
No.
I know. So over 250 million in her lifetime. And
It's like a paintball machine.
so that you can just see her head at the front, and that is her body, and that her egg-producing organ becomes so massive that she's rendered entirely... There she is. Oh. I know. She's played by Olivia Colman in the film. She's literally pulsating, producing eggs the whole time. She grows to be too large to leave the cell. She can be 100 times the size of the other termites.
Is that the king there on the end?
No, that's her.
The black bit at the end
Is
there?
her.
That's her.
And the rest is egg-producing organ.
Oh.
I said it was gross.
Is she having sex and producing an egg at the same time?
Yeah, so she's endlessly shagging. She goes through about 5 to 10 kings in her lifetime. I think they just get exhausted. I think they can't deal with it.
I mean, does she do it the same way every time? Like, do they have to experiment with the sex life to keep it fun and...
Yeah. No, I think she just gets rid of the king. And she can't move, so her babies tend to her, they feed her, they clean her, they drink the secretion that she sweats. Look at this. I did warn you, it's revolting. But when she has outlived her usefulness, so she's not producing enough babies anymore, the children surround her and they lick her to death. They literally suck the fluids and fats from her body.
Who would have thought that there was such a disgusting story behind something as lovely as a termite?
But here's the weird thing, when she dies, gradually the whole mound dies away.
So they lick her to death and then everybody dies?
Well,
No.
what you need now is to start a new termite mound, so what'll happen...
What I need now?
No, I mean... when she's died, you need to start a new mound, and so what happens is once a year, virgin queens will fly out of the mound and they'll land on the ground, and they instantly shed their wings, so they never fly again, and they meet a king, and they go underground, and they start a new mound.
And how quickly can she change the king?
Well,
Does she have to wear him out?
Yeah. I mean, so in her lifetime, she'll go through between 5 and 10 kings.
As one king finishes, does she sort of go, quick,
Give
I need
me
another?
another one, give me another one.
Jump on!
Talking about royalty, there was a study in 2018, and termite workers, you have to understand termite workers are generally blind, they perform a kind of curtsy when they can scent royalty. So there's a wax coat-like substance that is over the king and queen, and when the workers smell it, they pause and start shaking. Look, see them shaking? Because it's almost like a curtsy, like being in the presence of their leader. Anyway, moving on. What's wrong with the queen in this picture?
Nothing at all. Oh, no, he's kissing her hand. Sorry, I just realised.
Did you think that was a clean-shaven gentleman?
Is she dead?
She is dead. This is Inés de Castro. So we are back in the 14th century. She was the mistress of the then future king of Portugal, Peter I. He had a wife called Constance, and she died. It was very sad. So he immediately moved Inés in, and they had 3 illegitimate children. Now, his dad was still king then, Alfonso IV. He was furious. So he had Inés killed. Well, obviously, Peter didn't like this very much. So he caught 2 of the killers, and he had their hearts torn out and pulverised before him while he ate dinner. So quite cross. I mean, on the whole, quite cross. 6 years later, he became king. He announced that he and Inés had secretly married. He dug her up and, yes, and placed her on the throne and forced the court to swear allegiance to her and kiss her hand. So she's not only dead, darling, she's been buried for 6 years.
Well, in which case, they've done a great job.
Yeah. She looks pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look worse than that many days.
There's a magnificent coffin, which you can still see. It's at the monastery of Alcobaça. But there's a modern Portuguese expression, agora Inés é morta, now Inés is dead. It basically means it's too late. You can't turn back now. Yeah. But there she is, finally laid to
Being
rest.
licked by her children, by the way.
Well, it's such a horrific story. Lots of people thought it was a myth. But in fact, there is plenty of evidence to suggest that it is, in fact, a fact.
Jesus.
But actually, in this country, we had a similar sort of thing. So in 1667, 230 years after Catherine of Valois, she was the queen consort of Henry V, died, her tomb was disturbed. They were doing some renovations in Westminster Abbey. And after that, if you paid a little bit extra to your tour guide, they would take you to see the corpse. It became a sort of tourist attraction. And Samuel Pepys took his wife and daughters to see it. And this is really weird. He wrote in his diary, "I did kiss her mouth, reflecting upon it that I did kiss a queen, that this was my birthday, 36 years old, that I did first kiss a queen." I know. She was 230 years dead.
It still counts.
If it was his first queen. Was it his first corpse, though? Maybe it was. Maybe he couldn't say it was his first corpse because he's already done that, so he had to say it was his first queen.
Awkward.
Yeah.
Oh, the corpse thing. Oh, that.
That was my 30th.
Is that the dead queen?
I would suggest that a wooden
Yeah,
carving.
it looks
of
wood,
her.
yes.
I think, yeah, if that's her dead body, it's had work.
Yeah. There have been a couple of instances of royals who were crowned before they were born. King Louis X of France, he died on the 5th of June, 1316. He was succeeded by his son, John I, but he wasn't born until the 15th of November, so he reigned for 5 months in utero.
Did they have a coronation?
Well, he died 5 days after he was born, so he was... Yeah, but, I mean, in that dynasty, he's the one who reigned for his whole life.
He must be the only king to have reigned for 5 months longer than he actually lived.
Yeah. Ines de Castro was a bit of a stiff, you know, even for a royal. Now, what would you have to do to a mannequin to get yourself arrested?
Have sex with it for 15 years and then lick it to death.
I would say that if it's your mannequin, that would not be a legal issue, would it? If you want to hump it for years and years and then lick it to bits, then that's fine, as long as it doesn't belong to Marks and Spencer's and you're not doing it in the winter.
So if that happens to me, I can say David said it was fine.
Yeah, I promise you that you will not have a legal problem.
Have you trained in any way in the legal fraternity?
No, I have no training legally,
Right.
but I am right.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
So, a different kind of queen. We're talking about drag queens. In 1941, there was a drag queen called Julian Elting. He was arrested simply for pointing at a mannequin. So, this is really hard for us to believe.
What with?
Well... That's him on the left and that's him on the right as well. And it's impossible for us to imagine, but he was one of the highest paid actors in the world in his day. He was paid $3,500 a week, so that's nearly $60,000 now. In 1912, he had a Broadway theatre on 42nd Street named after him. Everybody loved his drag act. He was always doing lots and lots of costume changes. But then, after World War I, there was a spate of morality laws and men were banned from dressing as women. And shortly before his death, he was reduced to performing in a tuxedo with a mannequin next to him, dressed as he would have done when he dressed as a woman, and he was arrested in a Los Angeles nightclub for simply pointing. It was thought to be too much.
In what year was that?
1941.
41?
Yeah.
So they banned drag acts?
Yeah.
They banned drag acts when?
Moral.
So it started after the First World War,
Right.
and then it increased and increased to the extent that in 1941 he was arrested for simply pointing at a mannequin.
Jesus.
I know, it's bonkers, isn't it?
In wartime, drag acts would have been very helpful.
Yeah.
For morale.
Yeah.
I know that's different from moral grounds, but on morale grounds, more drag, please.
In terms of morality, probably the worst story about cross-dressing was a man called William T. Sloper. He was on the Titanic, and he was invited into one of the lifeboats by an actress he had just met that evening, Dorothy Gibson. When only a third of the lifeboats were filled to capacity, the whole women and children thing hadn't kicked in. He did survive. He got to the United States, and he refused to talk to reporters because he had said he would give just a story to his local newspaper. And one journalist took umbrage at this and wrote an article anyway, and invented the notion that he had in fact escaped because he was dressed as a woman, and it wasn't true at all. But he lived under the curse of this accusation for the rest of his life. There was somebody who did escape, sort of, by cross-dressing, a steerage-class passenger called David Buckley. He made his way into a lifeboat, and then all the men were ordered off, but a woman he was sitting next to threw her shawl over him, and he stayed in the lifeboat, and he did survive. But I don't think it's, strictly speaking, cross-dressing. It just was covered with a thing.
It's where cross-dressing meets hiding.
Yes. Now, who was the first queen to get a Brazilian?
Oh, Cleopatra.
Why do you think...
She used to bath in milk. She was up for stuff.
Ass's milk?
Yeah, not even normal milk.
No.
She married several of her brothers. She was a, you know, what we'd call now a weirdo.
No, it is not
Someone
her.
get a Brazilian husband?
We are heading indeed to Brazil, if that helps. I had to have this picture explained to me when I first saw it.
Well, we know more about you than we thought we did. I'm in the same gang as you. Right.
Oh, girl. Honestly, I thought it was caramel. I had no idea what it was. We're going to 1807. We are going to Portugal. The Crown Prince, Dom João. Napoleon is approaching, and he takes his entire court, including his queen, Carlotta, and he thinks, let's go to one of our colonies, and they head off to Brazil. So they go off in a convoy of ships from Lisbon to Brazil. 10,000 people go with him, and it's unbelievably overcrowded and unhygienic, and a lice infestation breaks out. So, in order to get rid of the lice, they all, including all the women, they have to shave their heads, they have to throw all their powdered wigs away and cover their heads in pig fat. Now, they're about to arrive in Brazil. They want to make a bit of a stir. But they've got bald heads and pig fat.
I think that'll do the job there.
They arrive at a place called Guanabara Bay, and Carlotta and all the other royal women emerged with their bald heads covered with improvised turbans. And apparently, so the story goes, the Brazilian women thought this was the height of European style, and it became the local fashion. The problem is that Brazil is full of a wonderful African-Brazilian population, and I would have thought that the turban thing would have come from that part of the world originally, but we don't know.
So they were bald everywhere then?
Are you worrying about...
I've just grown me winter's coat in.
This one looks not unlike David Mitchell.
Do you not think she looks a bit like Marty Feldman?
Yes, crossed with David Mitchell.
This is building up into quite the compliment.
Whether the story is true or not about the Brazilians, there is a long history of commoners imitating royals. There was a man called Guillermo, Duke of Mantua. He was a hunchback, so we're talking 16th century. And so all of his courtiers put humps on to compliment him.
Aww.
You've got to judge that carefully.
Yeah.
It might look like you're taking the piss.
Just don't. The Princess of Wales, Alexandra, she had a limp because she had a stiff knee joint, and it became fashionable to limp in the same way it was known as the Alexandra limp.
Oh, isn't there a thing about waistcoat buttons as well?
What's the thing about waistcoat buttons?
In Britain, you're supposed to leave your bottom button of a waistcoat undone, and I'd heard...
Because of some fat bastard?
Some fat bastard, yeah. Some king who couldn't do all his buttons up, so everyone went around with leaving some of their buttons undone, like, yeah, it's just normal, it's just really stylish.
And you had to have food around your mouth and all down your tie.
Yeah.
The waistcoat buttons is true. Edward VII, when he was Prince of Wales. So.
Oh, her husband?
Her husband, in fact, yeah. Here's another interesting fashion for royals. Louis XIV, he had a fashion that courtiers should have one long fingernail. Why was that?
My husband's got one special toenail for scratching his eczema. It's awful, isn't it? It's genuinely true. Is that the sort of thing you're after?
I feel in this show you and I are in danger of oversharing.
And you seem to be fine with that, though. That's...
Yeah, as long as he keeps it to himself, I'm all right.
Right.
Yeah.
He hasn't really, has he, now?
No.
He's only told me quite recently, and we've been together for nearly 15 years. So there's nothing I can do about it now, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm stuck with it.
Except maybe pay more attention in the future. So the one long fingernail, what do we reckon?
Is that a cane that he's leaning on, or is that the fingernail?
No, he didn't have the fingernail, so it was the courtiers who had...
Everyone else had to have the fingernail.
Yes.
Is it to do with his anus? Let me just get that out of my head.
What's he doing in your head?
Just imagine it.
Takeaway from this show.
Yeah.
Pulsating termite and a fingernail up Louis XIV's arse. Now...
So in this reality, he said, I want any of you to be ready.
Yeah.
There's no telling who I'm going to ask
No.
to stick their fingernail up my anus.
No,
I want you all to grow it. I don't want it to be a specialism. I want to say, you, now!
No, so he decreed that nobody was allowed to knock on his door. So instead...
Scratch.
Yes. They had to scratch really gently with one finger, and so it became a thing that you grew a fingernail especially to scratch on the king's door, and it really rather suggested you had the king's ear. I know, weird rules. Honestly, it would have been better off if they'd done it up his arse. I just think it... Anyway, moving on. What was your best chance of seeing the Queen's ass in the 18th century?
Asking really, really, really nicely.
Is she standing underneath some sort of a vacuum?
Those are bees, I think.
You know how if you send a big parcel, you have to get the bigger stamps?
Yes.
Has that got the ass on?
Oh, what, the stamps have?
Yeah, like, because you see more of it on the stamp.
So you're saying that stamps are like those things that they used to have peanuts on in pubs?
Yeah.
And the more expensive the stamp, the more of the Queen you see. I'm going to send a really big parcel. We'll see the whole of them.
Yeah, exactly that.
No.
Is it a donkey?
Yes, it is.
It's not the
Well,
Queen's bum, is it?
It's not the Queen's bum at all. This is Queen Charlotte. She was the wife of George the...
George III?
George III, absolutely right. And she had...
Very good on
He's
this
very
one,
good.
yeah.
I'm tickling it out of him.
That's my
Tightly.
secret. Yeah, an anus full of facts.
The anus of fact. It was...
Yeah. It's actually the working title of my memoir.
But it wasn't a donkey, it was a zebra. It was known as the Queen's ass, given to her by the governor of the Cape in South Africa in 1761. It was a wedding present. He sent a pair. He sent a male and a female. Unfortunately, the male, no stamina, died en route. But the female arrived only a year late for the wedding, but hey. And it was a very popular attraction. Lots of people had never seen one before, and she had stables at Buckingham Gate. And George Stubbs, the great painter, produced a marvellous large painting, and apparently she bred it. I mean, not... say not her personally, but apparently they painted white stripes on the backside of a male donkey to persuade her to mate with it, and it worked and gave birth. So what would that be? A donkey and a zebra?
A donkra.
Donkra.
Zebri.
Zebki.
It sounds like a condition. It's a zebroid.
Zebra.
Oh, you know how you can't sit very well when he calls me zebroids. Yeah.
Ah, they
That's
like
a
that.
very good photo. For 18th century technology. Amazing photo.
It does look like a donkey in leggings, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Donkeys in tie.
Apparently they use it, the same technique for breeding racehorses. Some stallions will only mate with mares of a particular colour.
I wear a George Clooney mask quite often when on my bum, you understand.
The very first giraffe to arrive in Britain it was a present to royals. It was sent in 1827 as a gift from Egypt to George IV. I like this. The ship that it was transported in, they had to cut a hole in the deck. At about the same time, Egypt gifted another giraffe to France, and it was called Zarafa. And it became so popular, it created a craze in Paris for having your hair done à la giraffe.
What was the hair?
Yeah.
So not like hair, like horns?
Yes, more like horns.
That's not, I would say, the most noticeable thing about a giraffe. It's just they looked at a giraffe and that was their takeaway thing. Oh, yeah, notice the little horns. I'm going to have my hair done like that. It's got a 4-metre neck.
They have the most astonishing tongues. I went to a feeding station once where you can go up into a tower and feed the giraffes, and honestly, it's terrifying.
Was it a tower for everybody else, or just for you?
Queen Elizabeth II has received lots and lots of exotic animals. 2 sloths from Brazil, 2 pygmy hippopotamuses from Liberia, a crocodile from Zambia, an elephant from Cameroon, 6 kangaroos from Australia, thank you, and a pig from Fiji, which decided to remain on Fiji. Why Fiji sent a pig?
Maybe they don't have many giraffes there.
Yeah.
We'll expect a giraffe. But we haven't got one. I'm so embarrassed. We can't send her a pig. She'll have a pig.
Now, we've got a dog collar, a hound tether, a game noose, and you've got the horn. What game can we play?
What noose have we got?
A game noose.
Oh, a noose that's up for
It's a
anything.
game.
Game.
Well, let's just try and work it out. What might you do with a game noose? So that's the third one.
Is it where, you know, you don't want to shoot pheasants, but you might encourage them to commit suicide? You sort of say, maybe, I mean, you're a pheasant. What is there to live for? You know? Anyway, there it is. I mean, to be honest, if the pheasant's killed itself, it's not the same thing as eating it having shot it, is it? You could probably make an argument that it's like a vegan pheasant.
This is kind of what David is talking about. It's about pheasants, but you want to be able to carry them home.
Like little soft handcuffs or something.
Well, I think it's more you put it round its neck, darling, and carry it home on your belt.
It's like a pheasant clip.
Exactly, darling. Yes. Where the hell am I going to put my pheasant? Oh, I know. I've got my game noose.
Yeah.
So all of these things come from one game. A dog collar, a hound tether, a game noose and a horn. From somewhere around 1470, this game.
Is it a sex game?
Depends how you play it, I suppose. Let's not limit ourselves.
Is it cards?
It is absolutely cards. So the world's oldest full set of playing cards, it's called the Hofjäger hunting pack. It's currently at the Metropolitan Museum in New York City.
What's the top one? It looks like a balloon whisk.
So instead of the suits that we have today, if we go through them, the dog collar on the bottom, and then the game noose, and then the horn, and then a hound tether.
Oh, OK.
There weren't any rule books until the 17th century, so we don't know what kind of games they would have played. But this would have been one of the first packs to have a queen. In Europe, they originally had no queen. They had a cavalier on horseback instead. But around the 15th century, they start to swap them out and start to have a queen. We're not really sure why. It may be that there's a slightly biblical influence. So if you look at the Queen of Hearts there, she's got the name Judith from the Book of Judith. Then the Queen of Diamonds was called Rachel, the favourite wife of Jacob. The Queen of Spades was linked to the goddess Athena. Clubs, I think they ran out of ideas, OK? So this was the name for the Queen of Clubs. Have a quick look and see why you think she might have been called this. Argine? It's an anagram.
It's Regina.
It is Regina, it just means queen. But lots of things have changed in games, because the queen in chess was originally the vizier, so the sort of advisor, the minister. The chessboard was a battlefield, and then it eventually became the royal court, so you get the vizier, the infantry, the cavalry, the elephants, and the chariots. They become the queen, the knight, the bishop, and so on. In the 15th century, it was thought inappropriate to promote a piece that you had more than one queen on the board. Why might that be?
Is there some queen who didn't like even the suggestion that there might be another queen and banned the practice?
It's thought to symbolise adultery. Yes.
And in Monopoly, when did they start having the little dog and the hat? And
That is a very good question. They were, in fact, all just charms off a charm bracelet.
Oh.
I know, sorry.
Yeah, that's a shit answer.
Sorry. I don't know, Sarah, but let's hope one day somebody finds out.
Thanks.
They'll just edit the bit out where I tell you the truth. OK.
I believe they were charms from a charm bracelet.
Did you get that from your anus of fact?
Yes, yeah, I've just popped into my own anus.
Now it's time for the short walk to the chopping block we call general ignorance. Fingers on buzzers, please. What's the oldest object in the crown jewels?
Is it the Queen? It's not a bad guess.
Wow, that's really loud.
I'm sorry, I turned the volume right up. It's an old spoon.
Yes, you are absolutely right. It is an old...
How did you know that? Another one out the anus.
Yeah, I know.
How old, David?
Well, most of the crown jewels were lost at the Civil War. So almost everything is post-Civil War, and there's the odd thing left.
Well,
the anus speaks! There's only very few things from before that, so from before then.
So it's late 12th century, so it's a 10.5-inch long anointing spoon. It's one of only 4 things that we have which predate the Restoration. The other 3 are some 17th century swords. It's from about the time of Edward the Confessor. You get a set of coronation regalia which gets passed down from ruler to ruler. But then, of course, as you say, the monarchy was abolished and the new government decides to melt everything down. But there was a guy called Mr. Kinnersley He was the yeoman of Charles I's wardrobe, and he bought the spoon for 16 shillings, about 11 days' wages at the time, so it's not a complete fortune. And when the monarchy was restored, he returned the spoon.
Did they give him 16 shillings? Or
No, he just gave it back. He just returned it.
What a lovely gesture.
Yeah. Now, what's the best thing to eat to help you with your hay fever?
Is it an antihistamine?
Would be the best thing, yes. But what is the thing people often think?
They say, well, this is a Klaxon one.
Yeah.
People say honey.
But it isn't honey,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. It's a long-standing myth that it would help with hay fever. Why might you think it would help with hay fever?
Gets the bees on side.
The idea is it's got pollen in it and it desensitises you to the pollen that's in the air. In fact, it's not going to help you at all.
It's really nice, though, isn't it, honey? I love it on toast or... porridge, I like it on porridge. I've never understood why you would put it on a carrot. That's weird.
So who puts it on a carrot?
People put it...
Glaze it, don't they?
Oh, I see. If you
I thought
roast
you meant, like...
Yeah.
No.
It's
just to make it, you know, easier. I don't know. Just so you like lubing up a carrot.
lube a carrot but to dislodge a particularly hard fact.
Some sort
I've got the date to the Wars of the Roses up there somewhere.
Hold on, I
This
lube up a
carrot will
carrot.
shift it.
I don't think honey's a lube. I think it's anything but a lube. It's going to make the progress of the carrot altogether more challenging.
Back to honey. The vast majority of seasonal allergies, they're caused by wind pollinators that release the pollen into the air, and bees generally pollinate plants that need insects to pollen them. So the pollen you get in your honey isn't pollen that's giving you your allergies.
Why is some of it runny and some of it hard?
It depends on how you treat it after it has been gathered.
It's not the bee's choice.
Not the bees don't go,
Make
"Oh,
a
no."
batch of hard
Yeah.
stuff.
As I said, the product development section, they've come up with nothing. No peppermint-flavoured honey, no strawberry honey.
You get clover honey and lavender honey. You do get some kind of... Yeah.
Do you?
What? I've never heard anybody more disinterested.
It's like none of you have heard of jam. That's the problem I've got.
Eating honey won't help your hay fever. Who wrote the Queensberry Rules?
The Marquis of Cream.
He endorsed them. He did not write them. They were written by a Welshman called John Graham Chambers, so he founded the Amateur Athletic Club. He's probably famous for the fact that he rode beside a man called Matthew Webb. Anybody know what Matthew Webb did?
He was in a sketch double act.
Sketch double act, yeah.
He was the really funny one. He was really, really funny.
Matthew Webb, first person recorded to swim the Channel in 1875.
You said the first person recorded. Does that mean that other people did it and just didn't tell anybody?
I mean, sure, people have been doing it for years.
I mean, we don't know, do we? Because they didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, just kept it quiet.
It's like the moon. Who knows how many people have been popping up to the moon?
Yeah.
It wasn't Columbus that discovered the Americas. The Vikings went there ages ago. The Vikings probably went to the moon.
Yeah.
I read the other day, after Columbus discovered America...
Well, he didn't, but when
Well, when he went there, there were 55 million Native Americans, and within 100 years, 90% of them were dead.
Yeah.
Mainly from disease. It's pretty astonishing,
horrific, yeah.
much worse than I had.
Yeah.
And not to mention nearly all the bison.
Yeah.
Carnage of that.
It's the way I mourn the... Oh, the suffering. No, it's a fly.
Something
I
slipped
was
out the
backing
anus
away.
of facts there.
Yeah, some of my facts are attracting flies.
I think the strangest adoption of the Queensberry Rules boxing was a sport. It was called horse boxing. And it was the invention of a guy he invented in Berlin, an African-American boxer called Bobby Dobbs. And it's essentially a boxing match, but you just sit and punch each other on a horse.
While the horses have a little chat.
Yeah.
Can you think of a quicker way of making horses despise humanity?
Apparently Actually, in 1912, it was demonstrated at a tournament in Germany, and they thought of putting this into the German army's, you know, proper officer training. The new sport will be valuable for the soldier on horseback in time of war, as when he loses his weapons, he will have to fall back on his natural means of defence. It didn't work out as a sport. Anybody know why?
Can't hold the reins.
Horses did not want to stand still. The Marquis of Queensberry didn't make the rules. What were tarot cards invented for?
Is it telling the future?
No. It isn't at all. What they really are, they're like an extra fifth suit to the pack, is really the idea. And lots of people want to trace it back to ancient Egypt and the occult and Kabbalah traditions and so on. There's no documentary evidence whatsoever to support the idea of using it for divination until about 1760s in France. Before that, they're like trumps in a game. And then they were also used as an aid to creating a story. And even then, what you think each card means, it varies tremendously depending on what tradition you follow.
I once had my tarot cards read. I was quite an old virgin. And
Was that the conclusion of the reading?
I was well aware of that. And I got the naked card, and I got really excited, thinking, what's going to happen? And she just kept saying, it's new beginnings. It's so frustrating that they don't mean what they look like they mean. I just wonder whether that just had a cock on it.
I've had somebody explain it to me, and they say, "Oh, the death card doesn't necessarily mean death. That means a change." Or
Yeah, or the end of a stage in your life.
Think, OK, you've got a card system. There's one, it's the death card. Why do you have to complicate it? You know, that's death,
No,
right?
because it upsets people, that's really the
Well,
main-
don't have the card, then. Change it for the new job card.
Yes, a new job card and a cock card. That would be
You're
better.
going to be moving house sometime in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the final fanfare of the scores. In first place, with a sovereign 8, it's Sarah! In second place with -1, it's David! In third place with -7, Colin! In fourth place, with a magnificent -25, it's Alan! Which means I have only to thank Sarah, David, Colin and Alan and leave you with this queenly quotation. When Edward VII was asked if his mother, Queen Victoria, would be happy in heaven, he replied, "She will have to walk behind the angels, and she won't like that." Good night. Good evening and welcome to QI, where tonight we are delighted to bring you both quantity and quality. And with me are a pint and a half of best, Joe Lycett. 2 heaped spoonfuls of delicious, Bridget Christie. 6 yards of finest, James Acaster. And a shed load of Alan Davis with bells on. Their buzzers emphasise quantities over qualities. Joe goes.
0, 1, 2.
Bridget goes.
3, 4, 5.
James goes.
6, 7, 8.
Alan goes.
9, 9, 9.
Right, QI are thinking of starting a high-quality airline, but we don't have the quantity of money required. What cost-saving measures could we take?
How much are trains?
Say you still wanted to go in the airline business.
How much would it cost to put wings on a train?
There are driverless trains, perhaps don't have pilots or stewards.
Gliders.
Right, why?
No fuel costs.
Well, it is fuel that we want to save. We want to help the environment, you want to save money and so on. So here's an extraordinary thing.
No passengers.
Well, you want the passengers
Or
to
luggage.
You want the passengers to be as light as possible.
Skinny people with no bags. Are you allowed to advertise that?
Yes. In 2013, Samoa Air were the very first airline to charge passengers according to their own weight. Yeah,
They did it.
Yeah, they had to pay 1 Samoan tala, so it's roughly sort of 29, 30p for every kilo that they and their luggage weighed.
Wow.
But the actual plane, you can save money on the actual plane. I know it sounds very strange, but white planes are more efficient than dark planes.
What?
Lighter paint is literally lighter. Dark paint on an aeroplane can add the equivalent weight of 8 passengers. You look, James, as though you don't believe me.
Well, it does sound like a lie.
Why might dark paint be heavier, do you think?
Because it's evil.
Dark paint is heavier because it has more pigments.
More
in it.
pigments. More pigments.
Yeah.
I was going to say pigment.
I was going to say pigment.
I was going to say, but I was allowing
All right,
you...
children, all right. So, if you look at a plane, you'll see most of them are of a lighter colour.
Why paint it at all?
So that is the other option, is that you could polish it. However, you do need to wash it more often to offset corrosion, if you've just polished it. And white paint would be cheaper, because actually the money you'd save on fuel, you would spend on washing. So those are your
It sounds
those are your
like a
choices.
headache, really. I'm not going to open a air flight business.
Are you not? But it's amazing where you can save money. So in 2018, United Airlines switched to lighter paper for the in-flight magazine, all right? They saved 1 ounce per copy. Doesn't seem like very much at all. But it's £11 saved for a full flight. You multiply that by the whole fleet over a single year, you have saved 170,000 gallons of fuel worth $290,000. Just a single ounce of paper on each individual in-flight magazine. The airline's beverage cart now weighs half what the old ones used to weigh. They've stopped duty-free sales in many instances.
Well, I've picked a few already you can get rid of. That little tiny tray that the other trays are in,
Yes.
why does that exist? I mean, all of the food can go because it looks shit.
I noticed on a flight I was on recently that they weren't showing Ocean's 11, but they were showing Ocean's 8, so that's 3 people.
That's 3 straight away. In the 1980s, there was a man called Robert Crandall. He was then head of American Airlines, and he removed just 1 olive from every single salad served to their customers. Nobody noticed, and they saved $40,000 a year.
Yeah, but I bet he was fatter at the end of it. If he's popping an olive from everyone's plate in every plane, that's having some effect. I'm no scientist.
No, clearly.
You could say no hats. No one could really get annoyed if you said no hats.
There's a lot of screws in a plane as well. I reckon a couple of those.
The Japanese airline called All Nippon Airways, in 2009, they asked passengers to visit the loo before boarding. They calculated that a full 767 could hold 240 pounds of urine inside its passengers, and if everybody boarded with an empty bladder, they calculated they could reduce carbon emissions by 5 tonnes over the course of a month.
Is that man doing a selfie while he's
We should move on. How can you make money from fresh air?
Catch it in the net.
Separate it into its component parts and then sell those.
You don't need to. You can just sell fresh air. So, in 2015, there was a man called Moses Lamb. He lived in Edmonton, Canada, and as a joke, he sold a bag, there he is, a bag of fresh Canadian air on eBay for 99 cents. It went, and when the bids for the second bag got to 168 Canadian dollars, he thought, might be onto something here. He gave up his job as a mortgage broker, and now he sells Canadian Rockies air. That is what he does for a living.
In jars?
Yeah, a single 8-litre bottle costs $24 US. His company, Vitality, has sold over 200,000 units, often to countries with very low air quality, so he sells them to China and India and South Korea and so on. And if Canadian air sounds pricey, you could have Swiss Mountain Air. That's only £17, roughly, a can.
How can you prove that it's from there?
Well, you just have to believe, Bridget. You can buy some good old British air if you prefer it. You don't want to buy air from abroad. You can buy air from Yorkshire, from Wiltshire, from Wales. There's a company called Ether. The company's founder, Leo de Watts, he has coined the term air farming. There he is.
He looks exactly like I thought he would.
It's completely pure air. It is actually collected in Somerset or wherever he happens to be. It's just scooped up and sealed.
It's just a lot of money for a jar, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Now, because we like to really go the full extra mile for you, all our elves have been all over the world collecting for you special fresh air. They haven't been opened. So, Jo, would you want to open yours, darling, and see where you think that comes from?
Wigan.
And our elf James on the right there, collecting from Slovenia. James? What are you getting? Notes
A
of...
jar.
It's just jar.
Heavy notes of jar.
It's come the furthest, actually, that
Really? Brazil.
It's come from Tasmania. That is Anna leaping there to collect air from Tasmania.
Smells less fresh than the studio does.
Is it?
I'm actually going to capture some studio air, and this will be available on eBay when the show goes out. QI Air.
Mine is unmistakably Scottish Highlands. What have you got, Bridget?
Sorry, we're seriously... I'm very good at smells.
OK.
When I was pregnant, my husband was out, and when he came back in, I said, have you been eating nice and spicy flavoured knickknacks? And he said, no, but there was a bag in the room that I was in.
Oh! What?
That doesn't smell good. That smells very greasy to me.
OK, yours comes from the Canary Islands. That's Mike collecting it in... These are genuine pictures. Right, Alan, yours.
Ooh!
What?
Someone pumped in there.
Yours comes from Hudson Bay, but we didn't have the money to go all the way to Hudson Bay, so it's a pub in West Ham. There it is, the Hudson Bay. Which country do you think has the best air quality in the world?
Britain.
Oh, that's so sweet and loyal and so wrong, so unbelievably wrong.
It's going to be Iceland.
It's going to be Scandi, isn't it, for sure?
Finland?
Finland, it is absolutely right. It is Finland, indeed. Followed by, of course, the usual suspects, all the Scandis, Iceland, Sweden, and then Estonia and Norway. UK is 25th after Singapore, and just one place ahead of Oman.
Sweden were really high, and they still have really good air. But they've dropped down the list because in these countries that have lots of snow, they have tyre spikes so that they're not all sliding around, and they're digging up the tarmac, which is causing some toxic air, and they have to sort it out.
Can't even stop yourself slipping on the road. No. Unbelievable. Worst quality air in the world. Anybody have a guess?
I went to Delhi and the air was black.
Yeah, it's Kanpur in Uttar Pradesh.
Is it?
Nicknamed the Manchester of India. Worst place for pollution in London?
The North Circular.
It's actually the Underground. Yeah.
Is it?
They did a study at the University College London in 2001. They found the air quality in carriages was 73 times worse than at street level. So if you take one single 20-minute journey on the Northern Line, you might as well have had a fag. It's the iron oxide particles caused by the grinding of the wheels and the rails as the trains brake. So it is about the most dangerous place, in fact, to breathe in the whole of London. It's upset everybody in the room.
Half these people came on the Northern Line.
Well, we're lucky if they get through the evening. So here's an extraordinary thing. Speaking of air in jars, there's a place called the Henry Ford Museum. It's in Michigan. It has a test tube which purports to contain Thomas Edison's last breath. There he is. The label reads, Thomas Edison was Henry Ford's hero as well as his friend. During Edison's final illness, this test tube was close to his bedside. Upon his death, it was sealed with paraffin wax. Edison's son Charles later sent his father's last breath to Henry Ford, knowing their close relationship.
I mean, that's a weird thing to do, isn't it?
It is a very,
Hang
very...
on, mate. Is this the last one?
Yeah. Also, if you just go, OK, I'm going to get the last one. Oh, he's still breathing. Just keep doing it.
The second to last breath.
You wouldn't want that when you were dying, would you? Somebody just trying to... No.
Last thing you see is a test tube in your face and
Yeah.
the eager eyes of a relative.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
No, I'm with you on that one, James. Quite right. Now, why might it be a bad idea to remove all the dead wood from the Houses of Parliament? So many answers, so little time. Is
Is it something to do with the gunpowder?
Yes,
plot
I think
or
the gunpowder plot. I'm with Bridget.
No.
No, it's nothing to do with that.
It's later than the gunpowder plot.
Later.
Well, we are talking about 1834. Up until 1826, the Palace of Westminster kept all its financial records on something called tally sticks. So you had a stick and you split it in two when you issued a debt, and when the payment was made, the two sticks were tied back together again.
Wow.
But eventually, of course, paper records superseded the need for these, and now they'd got a lot of old wood, so they decided to get rid of it. The obvious idea was to burn it. So on the 16th of October, 1834, the clerk of the works, who's in various records called Mr. Wibbly or Mr. Woobley, he ordered 2 cartloads of these tally sticks to be
Mr.
burnt.
Wibbly Wobbly?
Mr. Wobbly Wobbly, yes.
Mr. Wibbly Wobbly, get rid of the sticks. Get rid of them, Mr. Wibbly Wobbly.
Rid of the sticks, you want?
It was just like that.
Oh, Christopher Butterslip.
Yes. I've got a character act called Christopher Butterslip.
He drops everything, doesn't he, Christopher Butterslip?
Yes, he's got very slippery fingers, and his his catchphrase is "Whoopsie plops."
What's his job, Christopher Butterslip?
Oh, he's an auctioneer.
That's fantastic. This Ming vase.
Yeah.
So Mr. Wibbly Wobbly decided to burn 2 cartloads of these tally sticks in the basement staves at the Palace of Westminster, and the resulting fire burnt down both the House of Lords and the House of Commons.
What an idiot, Mr. Wibbly Wobbly.
Didn't feel good about it.
He should have known.
Yeah.
What have I done?
Who did you entrust this job to? Now, don't get angry. It better not have been Mr. Wibbly Wobbly.
So the chimneys had not been properly maintained. In those days, we're still talking about children going up chimneys, and they had cut footholds into them. There was a lot of residue, and the copper linings of the chimneys actually caught fire, and it spread eventually to the entire wooden interior of Parliament, and there was no fire brigade at the time. So everything was run by the insurance company. It took 5 hours for the fire boat to get to the House of Parliament because the tide was wrong. It was the largest fire since 1666. Turner painted several canvases of the disaster, and Constable, too, sketched it sitting in a hansom cab on Westminster Bridge.
Did they have to rebuild the whole shebang?
Yes, that's when we get the designs that we have today, with Charles Barry and Pugin.
Big Ben and everything?
Big Ben and everything, yeah. So
Wow.
well, apart from Westminster Hall was saved, so parts of it are 1,000 years old or more, and it only was saved because the wind changed. And so I know. So here's a supplementary question. How did the fire, the one at the Houses of Parliament, affect the length and breadth of Trafalgar Square?
Oh. It hadn't been built yet.
That's a
good answer.
Even if that's wrong, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
I like it.
So, apart from the tally sticks and all the stuff in Parliament that was destroyed, the very objects which defined the imperial standards of measurement were lost. So it meant that you had no way of ultimately deciding the length of something, yes?
There's a bronze plaque of all the weights and measures in Trafalgar Square.
You get an extra point. There is indeed such a plaque, and you can see it today. A mathematician and astronomer called Sir George Airy. He was charged with creating these new objects. They wanted to make sure that this could never happen again, so the standards were triplicated. So today you can find them in the Great Hall of the Guildhall, by the gate of the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, and as you quite rightly said, embedded in the granite at Trafalgar Square. So if you are facing the National Portrait Gallery, there's a sort of cafe and a bench, and actually it's slightly hidden, and most people probably don't even notice that it is there.
My child found it and said, "What's that?" And I went, "I don't know."
Which
I don't know, shut up. You absolute nerd.
Trafalgar Square was being built at the time, so it opened in 1844, so it was being built at the time. Now, what is the heaviest reading material in the universe?
Oh, something by Dan Brown.
Is it slate?
Is it slate?
Yeah, because people used to write on slate, didn't they, in school, and slate's very heavy.
Yeah. But this is an actual book. It's a book available online.
Oh.
It is called Googleplex Written Out. It is exactly as it sounds. It is one of the largest numbers ever named, and it is available in print. Well, it is theoretically available in print. So let's just go through what the numbers are. So a Google is 1 followed by 100 zeros, and it looks like this, OK? A Googleplex is 1 followed by a Google of zeros, and it is impossible to write down a Googleplex because there are fewer particles in the universe than actually there are zeros in a Googleplex. However, somebody wanted to write out Googleplex, a man called Wolfgang Nietzsche, and this is just 1 volume that is available to you. It has an ISBN, you know, proper international standard book number, but obviously no ISBN has been assigned to the individual volumes since the total number of volumes would exceed the number of available ISBNs. It is literally just zeros. It is just...
Sandy?
Yes?
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
But the last time I was on this show...
Yes.
Do you remember that I said I had something called triophobia, where...
Oh.
I can't look at...
I can't look at holes, can you?
Can't look at holes.
And
Oh, this is a
I've got
disaster for
really...
you.
Oh.
It's fucking
I feel
happened
really...
twice. I've got this condition, right, and it makes me feel like fainting and getting sick and gives me a headache.
Yeah.
You can't look at lots of circles that are close together.
OK, so I feel really bad. The person who named it was a man called Edward Kasner. Perhaps we have a picture of him. There he is. There's hardly any zeros.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's OK. Here's the thing. If you were to start to count to a Googleplex at 2 digits per second, the universe would end before you could finish. That's...
The EastEnders would carry on.
EastEnders would carry on. Yeah. If you wanted to count to 1 billion, it would take you 15 years, 308 days, 9 hours, 41 minutes and 50 seconds. Isn't that fantastic?
In the world of authors...
Yes.
How do you think that guy's regarded?
Do you want to see it, darling?
When they're all getting together and all the authors are meeting up...
Yeah.
Some of them are discussing their new ideas, and he comes along and tries to talk to them as an equal. I'm working on a new book as well. Yeah, I bet you are.
Yeah. So that's the heaviest reading material in the world. According to the Guinness Book of Records, the smallest book in the world is called Teeny Ted from Turnip Town. It is by 2 brothers, Malcolm Douglas Chaplin and his brother Robert Chaplin, and it is a 30-page book carved on a pure crystalline silicon page. It measures just 70 micrometres by 100 micrometres as it was etched using an ion beam at a university in Canada. So basically it fits on the width of a single human hair. I know. Isn't that... And what it says on there, if you read it, it says, Teeny Ted from Turnip Town, a success story by Malcolm Douglas Chaplin, B.A.
That's how you make all the magazines weigh less.
Yes. Anyway, you need a scanning electron microscope in order to be able to read this. There is a large print copy, but if you wanted a small one, it cost you about £10,000. But I expect you could keep that if you're really keen.
Yes, please.
Nighttime reading.
Oh, can I have it?
Colour in all the zeros.
Yeah. You can
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
read it while eating a bowl of Cheerios, Bridget.
Could you not play Twister?
They're far apart.
Oh, Twister's OK?
Circles have to be close together and exactly the same size.
So you could eat a crumpet?
I don't like crumpets.
Right.
I start to get the headache, and then I think, it's OK, it's really tasty, and they're not all the same size.
But the
and next to
crumpet,
each
I
other.
always think something might have gone in those holes. I mean, if you were that size, that's irresistible, isn't it?
I don't know what you're looking at me for.
Would any part of you fit into a hole of a crumpet, do you think?
I think it's too personal. We're going to move on. Right, new question. Which is my favourite quality street?
Are we going to guess and all the klaxons will go? Green Triangle.
Purple one. A little bit.
Toffee pennies. The toffee pennies.
The blue one that no one eats.
I reckon this is a trick.
It's not chocolates at all.
Not chocolates at all, is it?
It isn't chocolates. It's a play by J.M. Barrie called Quality Street. It's a 4-act comedy, and it was a huge hit in London. It opened in 1901, played for 495 performances. It's still done today. It concerns Phoebe. She's in her early 30s. She's still unmarried. And her former love, the Captain Brown, returns from the Napoleonic Wars, and she's very worried that he won't love her anymore. So she disguises herself as a younger girl in order to impress him. So the theme of staying young, J.M. Barrie uses it again later on in Peter Pan. The actress who very first starred in this was called Maud Adams. She was the first person to play the lead role in Quality Street, and she went on to be the first Peter Pan on Broadway. In fact, I think she played Peter Pan more than 1,500 times. She was a superstar in her day, one of the very first actors to earn more than $1 million a year, which at the time...
That's a lot.
It's an astonishing amount of money. And she was also an inventor. She assisted with the development of colour photography because she wanted to be able to capture things properly that she'd done on stage and capture them on film. She's amazing. Probably a lesbian.
What?
Yes. Very
Tell by the panpipe.
Yeah, you can. She's buried next to her secretary, who was her secretary for more than 40 years, Louise Boynton. I mean, it may just be that the secretary was busy and booked a double plot. I don't know. There we are together. How is Wendy Darling related to Long John Silver?
Fictional characters.
No, there's a sort of... there's an actual sort of connection. What do you know
Oh, this
about-
is annoying, this is.
Is it? Why, darling?
Because I've been told a fact about Wendy.
Go on, then.
And I've forgotten it.
Ah.
And I know it's going to be that.
Yes.
Very frustrated.
The character Wendy is based on a real girl who was unable to say friend, so she used to refer to J.M. Barrie as her Wendy, because friendy, Wendy, she used to say Wendy.
Yeah.
She was called Margaret Henley. So we have Wendy and we have Margaret Henley, the original that Wendy was based on, and that is her father, William Ernest Henley, right next to her, best known for writing the poem Invictus. And Henley lost his leg to TB when he was aged 12. He was also friends with Robert Louis Stevenson, who is the next person in the picture, who immortalised him in Treasure Island by turning him into Long John Silver. So in a way, Wendy from Peter Pan was the daughter of Long John Silver. That's a really sweet connection, isn't it? I love that. There are 4 streets in the UK called Quality Street. There's one in Merstham, so named when the 2 original stars of the West End production of Quality Street moved there, and all the other 3 are in Scotland. And as far as we've been able to work out, there are no shops on any street called Quality Street which sell Quality Street chocolates. But the chocolate selection is named after the play. Oh. John and Violet Mackintosh, who invented this new style of toffee in 1936, used the characters from the play on the packaging.
It's an arrogant advert, isn't it? I am John Mackintosh, the Toffee King.
You should do a character of a toffee king.
Yeah.
I should, shouldn't
Exactly like
The little
that.
toffey hammer.
I? Yes.
Can you still get that? A
Oh, you
toffee
must be
with a
able to
hammer?
get... If you can get a book with all zeros in it, you can get a toffee hammer still, right? Or a more sweet... Or a fudge hammer.
Why would you have a fudge hammer? That would just make a big dent.
Quite satisfying to hit some fudge with a hammer. Maybe more satisfying than the toffee.
Which did a survey in 2018, and they found that chocolate selections always have fewer of the ones that people actually like. So they asked about 1,000 people to name their favourite. The 2 most popular Quality Street chocolates are the purple ones and the green triangles, and these should appear, by preference, 11 times in the box, and they actually appear just 5 to 6 times.
Oh.
And it's the same with Heroes, Whispers, Twirls.
No wonder this country's the way it is. The most uninspiring country in the world.
Okay.
Oh, just the green one, please. The green triangle that doesn't really taste of anything.
Do you not have favourites?
I hit the toffee finger, I hit the caramel. Those
They're
ones
the
are
same.
delicious. They are not the same, that's racist. The toffee one's a lot firmer, the caramel one's nice and soft. Give that to an old man with dentures, ask him if they're the same.
I just didn't expect, when I started on this show, that I would watch James call Bridget a racist.
Absolutely appalled in what you just said about toffee fingers and caramel cups.
I like that everybody's got a line that they draw somewhere. Right, here we go. Which is quicker, a jiffy or 2 shakes?
2 shakes?
2 shakes of a winkle's tail, isn't it?
Lamb.
Lamb.
My gran used to say a winkle.
A winkle?
Alan, I'd like to hear some other things your nan said.
Which is quicker, a jiffy or 2 shakes? What do you
Jiffy.
reckon? Well, it depends on the type of jiffy.
A really quick one.
It's got to be 2 shakes.
Well, they're both genuine units of time. So a shake is the time it takes for 1 step in a nuclear chain reaction. It's about 10 billionths of a
I
second.
forgot to mention my grandma's a nuclear physicist.
No, you didn't. So a nuclear chain reaction typically takes 50 to 100 shakes. What?
God, I'm going to get this really wrong.
Go on, then.
Go on, then. We'll enjoy it.
Comes some more racism, I imagine.
I think a jiffy is something to do with light or...
Well, there are different kinds of jiffies.
Oh.
Is the truth of it, I'm afraid. So
yes.
a shake is to do with nuclear reaction, and like lots of the terminology, it derives from the Manhattan Project, which was during the Second World War, and comes from the expression 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. We don't actually know why people say 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. It's a bit like, I don't know, faster than you can say Jack Robinson. So different kinds of jiffies in electronics. A jiffy is the period of an alternating current power cycle. So typically that would be a 60th or a 50th of a second. And in physics, it is the time it takes for light to travel 1 Fermi, which you knew, presumably.
Yes,
it's
I did.
approximately the width of a proton. So you were absolutely heading in the right direction. Now, what letter did the Romans use to write the number 1000?
Oh, hang on.
Q.
No? Anybody know in the audience?
Ha, idiots.
So M not used to mean 1000 until the Middle Ages. Not used by the Romans at all.
The Middle Ages called at the time.
Now. Why did the Romans not use it for 1000? What was the reason, do you think?
They couldn't count that far.
They didn't need to. They hardly used that many large numbers. When they did, they used an I in brackets. There was a monument erected in the Roman Forum to commemorate a victory in the First Punic Wars, and on the column you can see an I and lots of brackets, and it is repeated at least 22 times. There may be more, but it represented the 2,200,000 bronze coin that they looted in the Carthaginian Wars, which obviously they wanted to celebrate. Later on, to write 1000 in Roman numerals, they used an X inside a circle. And later still, they used the Greek letter phi.
Now, like an eye in brackets, that's an emoji for a butt.
Is it?
Yeah, you bracket, line, bracket.
Why would you send that?
Spice up some dying relationship.
I've just done it on a picture here so I can see. Yeah. It doesn't look like a bottom to me. Then eventually they had the 8 on its side, which has evolved into our symbol for infinity. And finally, the M was adopted in the Middle Ages, probably from the Latin mille for 1000. So we learn at school to write the number 9 as... IX! The audience get that one. There's a point for the audience for that one. But also that rules comes from the Middle Ages, I'm afraid. So the Romans used a mixture of contractions. So they might put 1x like this, but they might also put V and 4 I's like that. And you still see it on clock faces and watches. And actually, I think it's rather beautiful. Can you see there the 4 I's for the number 4? And I think it's rather beautiful because if you use the 4 I's like that, so the first 4 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, all have those beautiful I's in them, and the next 4 are the only ones with V's in it, and the next 4 are the only ones with X's in it. So actually, to look at it, it's rather beautiful. Big Ben actually breaks this convention. The 4 is I and V. But anyway, the Romans tended to do maths on an abacus rather than actually write it down. But let's have a go at doing maths with Roman numerals. It's actually easier than you think. We should have some boards there with some Roman numerals.
Do we need this?
No, darling. Can you write out for me in Roman numerals, first of all, 16, and then...
16, Bridge, 16.
16, and then below it, the number 8,
good.
please.
Good, correct. 8, Bridge, come on, Bridge.
Yeah, all right.
Done it?
Yes.
OK.
16.
16.
So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for 16, which is XV1. I'll just do it with these people. OK. OK.
If I showed that to anyone,
Yeah.
I'd say, what's that? They'd go, 16, because it says 16.
They would say, that says 16, and I'm not a Roman. Good luck finding some Romans to read that for you.
OK. So I want you to add those two things together. So we've got XV1 and V111. So here's what you do. There's a really simple way of doing it. First, put all of the letters from the two numbers together in a single row.
Like that?
Yeah. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to put them in numerical order, largest on the left. So it's going to go X and V, and then I want you to simplify it. So V and V together makes what in Roman?
10.
Remove those and put an X. Stick the X there, and there you have the answer. It is 24.
24.
It's actually really
Previously
simple.
on 24.
Isn't that brilliant?
See, now I feel a bit guilty that we were silly because I would have learnt something there.
I led him astray, to be fair.
Did you? I'm afraid extra points to both Bridget and Karen for that.
How old are you, darling?
53.
They introduced Roman numerals at the end of BBC programmes in 1976. Why do you think they did that? There you are, there's one right there. Why did they do that?
Inform, entertain, educate.
One theory is it was to confuse the viewer so you wouldn't know you were watching a repeat. There's another theory is that it comes from the film industry. So physical film can degrade over time and it makes it difficult to read numeric values, and Roman numerals are easier to read when film degrades. But I prefer the idea that it's fooling us all, that we haven't seen Dad's Army before. Now, what is the biggest thing you could buy with a quid?
Is it a whale? Pound sterling?
Yes.
We've visualised the shelves in Poundland. Don't remember any whales there.
You can get an ironing board, something like that.
Think about football.
A football club?
Oh.
Not Aston Villa or someone like that.
Chelsea Football Club, Ken Bates bought it for £1 in 1982. He later, Bates, sold the club to Roman Abramovich in 2003 for 140 million. Today it's estimated to be worth 1.5 billion. Other companies that have been bought for £1, British Home Stores, Barings Bank, Reader's Digest, Homebase. It doesn't have to be £1. When Rover was sold to BMW, it was 10 quid. But you have to have something. It's a legal necessity in a contract. It's called a consideration. Something has to be paid. It used to be known as the peppercorn, like peppercorn rent. Bath University still pays an actual peppercorn to the city as ground rent.
What?
Yeah, it's... What?
How does that
Have you
work?
woken up? What's happened? When you have a legal contract, if I'm going to sell you this card, you must give me something for it.
A pen.
All right, there you are. That's it, and I'll have the pen. Actually, it's quite nice. Thank you.
No, they're the old answers. Are they physically doing it still? Are the university actually going to
the city and
giving them a peppercorn?
It's become a sort of ritual.
Do you think the peppercorns get used?
I like that the city might be building up to a whole mill.
Yeah.
The new 12-sided pound coin, it's got a number of features that make it more difficult to counterfeit. Anybody know what they might be?
Is it a weight thing?
No, it's a kind of hologram. So if you look, this is just below the Queen's head, and if, depending on the light, it either says £1 or a pound symbol. If you can you see, just if you flip the coin, it's a good noise from everybody.
Noise.
Ooh.
That's all the forgers. Coachload of forgers in. Oh!
According to the Royal Mint, there is a hidden security feature, but obviously we don't know what it is. The reverse of the new pound coin was designed as part of a competition. There were thousands of entries. People suggested...
A child made it.
It was a child, a 15-year-old David Pearce from Walsall. People suggested teacups and, I don't know, rain clouds and the London Eye and Rolling Stones' tongue and lips and all that kind of thing.
Cock and ball. The missed opportunity.
He got his design on 1.5 billion coins and won £10,000. And actually, if you look very closely at the coins, you can see DP... There it is, at the bottom of the design. He actually got his initials on the coin. I like this. His response after winning the competition was, honestly, I'm not too fussed about it all. My friends are more excited than me. It's just something I did once, you know.
That's false modesty.
It is, really. Now it's time to pound our guests into submission with the coin toss that we call general ignorance. Fingers on buzzers, please. Oh. What are skid marks made from?
Zero.
It's
Poo.
good to get get it out of the way, isn't it?
Tyres.
Rubber.
So we're talking about skid marks on the road. It's actually caused by the bitumen heating up rather than any tyre rubber being laid down. Yeah. So as the car's brakes stop the wheels from turning, the friction between the tyres and the surface results in high temperatures that cause the tar to melt along with the bitumen, and the bitumen oils in the asphalt, they rise to the surface, and once the surface cools down, the skid marks will just fade away. So the technical term for a skid mark is a bituminous material smear.
That's fine. I've always wondered, how is it possible for that skid mark to be produced by that vehicle?
It'd be quite a swerve, wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
That's Mr. Wibble's car. Oh, boy!
Anybody know where the word skid comes from?
Scandinavia.
It is a randy Scandi fact. It comes from the old Norse word skid, which just means a stick of wood. So it referred to the piece of wood that used to be laid down to help move logs. They used to use skids to move things downhill. People who lived on Skid Row were originally the loggers. People who hit the skids, so it's about going downhill.
Yeah.
The Open University offers a course called Analysing Skid Marks. Apparently an important skill in motor crash forensics.
I do that every Monday, Sandy. Monday's wash day.
Fine, I see, OK. You can get different types of skid marks.
With blood or without?
Do you know what's the first citation in the OED for skid marks referring to stained underwear? It's Barry Humphries in one of his Barry Mackenzie private eye cartoons published in 1968. Yeah.
I've got a poster of him on my wall.
Got a wall?
Yeah, I've got a wall. Doing pretty well these days. Saving up for some more walls.
How high is it?
It's a pretty long wall, actually. It's very
Put a corner
long.
in it. Put a corner in it.
Yeah, Trump's trying to buy it off me. He ain't going to get it. No way.
Anyway, moving on. Now, how many trees are there in this picture?
Here we go, to the trick.
Well, it's going to be one, isn't it?
6,
What did you say?
0.
What did you say?
1.
Absolutely right. There is one tree. You are entirely correct.
No. Look how many... trees.
It's called the...
This show is a scam.
It's called the Trembling Giant, or Pando, and it looks like an enormous grove of quaking aspens, but it's actually a single organism, and it may be up to 1 million years old. Wow. It is one of the great wonders of the United States. It lies in Utah, and it's actually a male organism, but it produces asexually, so it's reproducing new stems underneath from the roots, and each of the 47,000 or so stems that are there are genetically identical. Unfortunately, it hasn't been growing for 30 to 40 years. It's possibly thought to be dying. It's possibly the largest organism on Earth by weight.
Is it not protected? What?
It is, and they're doing their best to try and save
okay.
it. But you get grazing animals that eat the new shoots. So when old trees die, new ones are not replacing them, which is what used to happen. Right. But the roots are thought to be at least 80,000 years old. Some people have suggested it could be 1 million years old. I think it's the most beautiful thing and very worth visiting while it's still there. Who wrote the Haydn quartets?
Oh, no.
No? Yeah.
Haydn.
6,
Yeah.
Yeah, Bridget said
Did you
it.
say Haydn?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Said it with a sneery tone because he's foreign.
Yeah.
No, it was dedicated to Haydn, written by Mozart.
I was going to say Ed Sheeran.
So Haydn was kind of a mentor for Mozart. Haydn didn't actually invent the quartet, but when he was about 18, he was asked by a man called Baron Fürnberg to come up with something that 4 amateurs could play at home. That's how string quartets began. Anybody know why Haydn's Symphony, number 45, is called the Farewell Symphony?
He wrote it at a bus stop.
I want it to be that. Well, there's a Hungarian prince called Nicholas I, and he had gone to his summer palace and he'd brought the orchestra, but he had stayed way longer than anybody thought was sensible. So they asked Haydn if he could drop not such a subtle hint. So in the final adagio, each musician in turn gets up, snuffs out a candle on his music stand and leaves the room until all that is left is the 2 violins, and apparently the prince got the message and they went home the next morning, which I...
That's very cool.
It's lovely. What type of tool is used to make jigsaw puzzles?
A jigsaw.
over with, Bridget.
So today, jigsaws are actually made with lasers or rolling presses, but when jigsaw puzzles were first introduced, they were obviously made with a...
Fudge hammer.
Jigsaw.
No, not made with a jigsaw at all. They've never been made with a jigsaw. The jigsaw was not invented until the 1850s, and the first puzzle we would recognise as a jigsaw was 1762. But even then, it was made with a fret saw.
Why was it called a jigsaw?
The term first came from a London engraver called John Spilsbury, but they were actually called dissected puzzles to begin with. He made a map on wood and cut out around the countries, and it was to give children the opportunity to learn all the different countries. My favourite thing, I love this fact, a jigsaw puzzle manufacturer typically uses the same cutting pattern for lots of different puzzles. So if you buy 2 puzzles of the same size from the same manufacturer with 2 different pictures, you can mix and match and still make a puzzle. And there's an art professor called Mel Andringa who uses this to make extraordinary puzzle montages. Have a look at this picture.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that great?
I'd frame that.
I'd
frame it and put it on my wall.
I think it's fantastic. The jigsaw puzzle was invented before the jigsaw, which brings us to the puzzling matter of the scores. In last place, my goodness, it's very good, with minus 42, it's Alan. Next with minus 14, it's Joe.
I tried.
Climbing up to third place with minus 13, Bridget. In second place with minus 12 is James. But this week's winner with minus 9, it's the audience! Thanks to our guests, James, Joe, Bridget and Alan. I leave you with this quality quotation from the American columnist and author Alice Kahn. For a list of all the ways technology has failed to improve the quality of life, please press 3. Goodbye.